Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship.
Well, I guess this is my cue to start talking. This is the Rebel News Daily live stream, and this is our post-debate, or at least post-French debate live stream. And everybody at home, if you're the praying kind, pray for us because we're doing this remotely. Catherine is out there in Ottawa, and I'm out here in God's country in Alberta. So we're trying a little something new. Normally, we connect by Zoom or by Skype. Today, we're connecting by Zoom. Before I came on air, I told Justin, Mr. Producer, that I was scared. He said he was scared too. But so far, so good. I can see Catherine, and hopefully she can see me. Catherine, how you feeling? Great job last night.
Oh, thank you, Sheila. My heart is still pumping from last night.
Yeah, it was. It's scary. To ask a politician, someone you see on TV, Justin Trudeau is really one of the most powerful people in the country. And, for our people to be able to put so many questions to politicians that I think our people care about, a lot of those questions that were asked, I couldn't have cared less what the responses were. And I sort of zoned out at one point when some of the questions were coming in, because I thought, who cares about this stuff except for the guy asking the question? But you're not supposed to be asking about your own petty issue. You're supposed to be asking questions that the people want answers to, not, whatever your niche issue is of the day. So I'm really proud of you guys. I'm proud of the whole team. And I thought it was great because so many of the questions that got through were from people who have started with the company since the last election. So I thought that was great.
Yeah, I was surprised that so many Rebels got to ask questions last night. I thought they were just going to scratch us off the list, but they actually let us ask our questions, and they let Alexa ask her question. And then shortly after, I was able to ask my question. And so had that not happened so close back to back, I don't think my question would have had such an impact because people would have forgotten that Jagmeet had dismissed her question. So it worked out really well. And we were wondering, is there someone over there that has our back maybe? Or maybe it was just a coincidence, but it worked out really well time-wise.
Yeah, I think, I'm not sure if somebody had our back, but I think there were just so many of us that even if they tried to block us, the rest of us would just sort of sneak through and get behind enemy lines, which I think is what happened because I was on the call, well in advance. I got the little beep that you get when they put you into the queue. I got that. And then at one point, the moderator or the guy taking the questions said, there's nobody else on the phone lines. And I'm like, no, I'm literally on the phone line. So I don't know if that was a technical issue or if they're just we've had enough Rebels for today. But I'm really proud at the impact that we made at that debate. I think we were the story of the debate. I think we won the debate. We won the debate just by being there, and irritating everybody and frightening everybody, but also that we put some tough questions to politicians. And we, I think, made Justin Trudeau lose his cool and show how unstatesmanlike he is.
And isn't that the job of a journalist to put the scare into these politicians? But it seems like everyone gets so upset at us for doing that. But that is literally the job of a journalist, is to put questions, hard questions to politicians, ones that they're not prepared to answer and maybe don't want to answer. Those are the most important questions to ask. So it's funny that we're getting, heat from half the people and praise from the other half. It's yes, we're doing our job, love it or hate it, that's our job. So, and we're still trending on Twitter right now.
Yeah, I know. I think it's really interesting to see just how many bailout media journalists are mad at us for asking tough questions of their guy. We literally went to court twice yesterday and beat Justin Trudeau's top lawyers twice yesterday to ask prickly questions. It should have surprised nobody that we asked those questions. And it's funny to see just how offended they are. It's for the journalists, it's we asked them the questions. They're taking all of this so personally that we're in their little safe space with the Prime Minister. I'm kind of glad about that. That's one of those things that I'm pretty smug about today.
Yeah, Alexa told us afterwards that whenever they said rebel news on the phone, that all the other journalists in the room rolled their eyes, and it's like, oh, sorry for posing a tough question to your king, because really, like, the king, Justin, is the one paying them, but we're the only ones who get $0 from Prince King Justin. So it's just so funny that it's almost like a monarchy where it's like, how dare you speak to the king in that manner? Off with your head. It's like, this is 2021. We don't live under a monarchy. This should be like you said, it should be a surprise to no one that we're going to fight to be there and that we're going to ask tough questions, and yet we still get all these eye rolls. It's like, you can ask a tough question as well, but you're scared because you're funded by. I wonder what goes on in those meetings. Like, if one of the journalists actually really laid into Justin Trudeau, would someone from the higher ups call CBC and be like, not a good look? Like, I would like to know, because I don't know. Maybe they're encouraged to, but I doubt it.
Well, but I'm going to answer this and then I'll explain what we're doing here, because I feel like we're just letting everybody eavesdrop on a private conversation between you and I about what happened yesterday. So I should tell everybody what exactly we're doing on the live stream. But just moreover to your point, remember when Justin Trudeau was sort of in the height of his scandals? What the WE scandal was just sort of unfolding. Ethics scandals were just unfolding. His mistreatment of women, those scandals were just unfolding. And it sort of came out in the media that Justin Trudeau's handlers, the PMO, they basically said that they could get favorable op-eds published in mainstream media publications. So to say that, if a journalist wanted to ask a prickly question, would they even be able to? I think it's pretty clear that they probably couldn't, given how much editorial control Justin Trudeau's PMO has over the mainstream media, and how they are just so blatant and shameless about it. They were going to get favorable op-eds from, I think it was Katie Telford who said that they could get favorable op-eds for Justin Trudeau to sort of give his scandals a bit of the spin cycle.
Yeah, and obviously it's not shocking that you're our editorial review, and you let us ask tough questions, because that's our job. So we don't have a whole conglomerate of government officials telling us what not to say. It's just you, and we all talk about what kind of things we want to ask. And Ezra in our meetings constantly says, go for the truth. That's the most important thing. And so it's so funny when Justin Trudeau went after Tamara, saying, and there's so much to unpack there, but when he said, you guys spread disinformation or misinformation, I think is what he said. It's like, specifically what? Like, can you name a single thing that we have said that's misinformation? Because we would be taken off of YouTube. We'd be given strikes, and we're so careful, and we run everything through you, and we run things through our legal team. So it's so funny because he's spreading misinformation. Like, he is spreading misinformation. Like, just like one example, just one, Justin, but
yeah, I could give you a handful of Justin Trudeau misinformation scandals. But before we go on, I should tell everybody what we're doing. This is the Rebel News Daily live stream. It used to just be on Friday, and it just used to be hosted by Ezra Levant, but then the pandemic struck and there was more news than ever. So we thought, what a great way to discuss the news that happened so fast with the pandemic, and things are changing so fast. And so we thought, let's just expand it to 5 work days a week, 10 a.m. out here in Alberta, noon out there in Toronto. Catherine's in Ottawa today because she was there on the debate scene. I'm very proud of the work that you've done and the entire team. And it gives us a way to interact with our viewers, interact with each other, because I'm out here in the West. I don't work in the office, so it's a great way for me to feel connected to everybody. But it used to be a way for our viewers to support the work that we do on YouTube through something called a super chat, but then YouTube went full censorship and they demonetized us. So even though there are 1.5 million YouTube subscribers who watch us every day, and we're not going to abandon you, but we would like to let you know, if you are watching us on YouTube, take an off-ramp to another platform that doesn't really care about your politics, like Rumble, like Odyssey, and like Super U. And all three of those give you the ability to support the work that we do completely willingly, unlike how Justin Trudeau makes you support the mainstream media, those hand-wringers in the mainstream media cabal who are look down their smug noses at us for asking good questions people want answers to. You can leave us a Rumble rant, which we will read on air. You can also support us on Odyssey by buying some of their library cryptocurrency, or you can leave us a tip or a hyper chat using regular old currency, and you can tip us as a creator over on Super U. And I think I've covered off all the bases for all the different ways that you can support us and find us without having to expose your eyeballs to the censorship of YouTube. And there will come a time, depending on how close we get to the red zone of the things we can't talk about with the coronavirus pandemic, where we might have to say goodbye to everybody on YouTube for the live stream today, and we'll just sort of go over to the other platforms. And hopefully, if you are watching us on YouTube, that you will follow us over there when the time comes. And so I think that is checking off all the boxes of all the things that we have to do before we get talking about what happened last night. Justin, maybe you could throw up, I think, one of the most incredible interactions of the night, and that would be Tamara's question to Justin Trudeau, because it, just like I think with Justin Trudeau's, his problems with the lady folk, with Jody Wilson-Raybould, with Rose Knight, with Selena Caesar-Chavanez, I think he's guilty of that which he accuses us of when he says, we spread disinformation and misinformation. I think the phone call might be coming from inside the house. So let's roll that one, shall we?
Right. I have a question from Tamara Ugolini from Rebel News.
Mr. Trudeau, the only reason that I'm allowed to ask you this question is because today the federal court ruled that the government doesn't have the right to determine who is or is not a journalist. This is the second election in a row that the court had to overturn your government. Do you still insist on being able to make that decision, and why?
First of all, questions around accreditation were handled by the press gallery and the consortium of networks who have strong perspectives on quality journalism and the important information that is shared with Canadians. The reality is organizations like yours that continue to spread misinformation and disinformation on the science around vaccines, around how we're going to actually get through this pandemic and be there for each other and keep our kids safe, is part of why we're seeing such unfortunate anger and lack of understanding of basic science. And quite frankly, I won't call it a media organization, your group of individuals need to take accountability for some of the polarization that we're seeing in this country. And I think Canadians are cluing into the fact that there is a really important decision we take about the kind of country we want to see. And I salute all extraordinary, hardworking journalists that put science and facts at the heart of what they do and ask me tough questions every day, but make sure that they are educating and informing Canadians from a broad range of perspectives, which is the last thing that you guys do.
Question?
Methinks the lady doth protest too much a little bit there. There's a lot to unpack there, because Trudeau goes to accuse us of misinformation and disinformation. And I'm pretty sure, because it's like my job around here to make sure that we don't spread misinformation and we have all of our facts checked and our T's crossed and our I's dotted. I'm pretty sure the Trudeau campaign was the one that was flagged by Twitter for spreading misinformation. That was a severely altered video from Chrystia Freeland that was flagged by Twitter for election misinformation. That was the Liberals, not us. So again, the phone calls coming from inside the house there. there. But again, he starts off with misinformation. He says that the accreditation process is handled by the press gallery. Well, we were literally in court twice yesterday because the Debates Commission denied our accreditation. Same as in 2019. We had to sue the Debates Commission. It's not the press gallery. And, he also goes on to blame us for the polarization that's unfolding in Canada when he's the one demonizing and discrediting everyone who doesn't toe the exact Liberal Party line on every single issue. If you think life begins at conception, you're anti-woman instead of just pro-life. If you are like, maybe I'm fine with vaccines, but maybe I don't think that people should lose their job because they don't want to take one. All of a sudden, you're an anti-science, anti-vaxxer. If you want to protest the prime minister, which is your right in a free country, all of a sudden we're subjecting the prime minister to violence and all of this demonization of people who don't think exactly like Justin Trudeau. It's leading to division. It's causing misinformation. That's got nothing to do with us. That's all on him. But heaven forbid this prime minister accept any form of responsibility for what he's done over the last 6 years. I'm not running the country. He is.
Yeah, and we all remember last week when he pointed behind him and said, those people are basically going to hurt your children. There is nothing more precious to somebody than their child. So to say those people are the ones putting your child in danger, that is polarization. That's dangerous. We saw what happened in, I think it was 2015 when, I don't want to get my facts wrong here, but remember there was that baseball game and that crazy person went and started killing Republican senators, shooting Republican senaters.
Yeah, Steve Scalise, a Bernie yes. Bro shot Steve Scalise, nearly killed him, and that was based on ongoing dehumanization and demonization of Republicans. And somebody ended up shot, and how quickly people forget all of that.
Yeah, and so to hear the prime minister saying those people pointing behind him like we're some sort of lesser beings are putting your children at risk, it's like, that's dangerous. That's going to scare people. And now you're basically creating more division, and you could lead to violence. Imagine if something horrible like that happened, like that would be on him. And yet he's up there on the national stage saying, you people are causing this polarization. It's like, are you watching the same? Are you looking through the same lens as I am? Obviously not, but it's just, maybe I'm sensitive, but I'm like, that hurts. To hear, I don't like the guy, but he's still my prime minister and he hates me. That's mean. I know it sounds so silly, but it's like, my God, I would never want anything bad to happen to him because he's a human being. He's a father. He's a husband. And yet it seems like he is actually trying to incite so much hatred towards us. It's like, that's crazy. I can't believe he doesn't get held to a higher standard, but who's there to hold him to it? I mean, he's the leader. So it's shocking.
I almost said the politicians instead of the media, but I repeat myself. They're indistinguishable. I mean, I always say the Liberal Party and the media, and it's like, Sheila, why are you repeating yourself? They're all the same. But, you would think the media would say, hey, pump the brakes a little bit here because, just people who just think differently than you, they're not evil. You might just think that they're wrong, which is your opinion, but they're not evil. But we've moved past that, where if you think differently, then you are actually evil. And for me to listen to Justin Trudeau accuse us of spreading dangerous misinformation that could be harmful, and then you get some, the Canadian version of the violent Bernie bro, who's suffered through 18 months now of TV-induced anxiety because, everybody's going to die if you don't yell at that person not wearing a mask in the grocery store. What kind of jeopardy does that put us, our journalists, in when we're recognizable faces out on the street? And the prime minister, instead of just answering the damn question, decided instead to demonize us as the dangerous ones here. So what happens when this foments violence against our journalists one more time? Because thank goodness you really haven't been attacked, but I've been punched out by the Canadian version of a Bernie bro. I think David Menzies is the most assaulted journalist in the country. We had Matt on the morning call this morning let us know that somebody came at him and assaulted him yesterday in the course of his job. I mean, more of our journalists have been assaulted than not. And this doesn't help us. And when Justin Trudeau, who claims he's a feminist prime minister and he cares about women in journalism, he turns around and he demonizes the female journalist who asked that question. Did he put Tamara in danger? Well, I know that if Stephen Harper had said that to, name your CBC lady journalist, he would be accused of dangerous sexism. But Justin Trudeau, he's not held to that standard because he's bought off the entire media.
Yeah, and we know Tamara, and our viewers know Tamara. She is the sweetest, most well-spoken person. Like, she's just a lamb. So when for him to throw that back in her face, and I see the clips going around on Twitter, and it's really fun to see how the other side sees things, because we live in our little world, and it's like we all expose ourselves to the other side, and people actually are like, yeah, Trudeau, like, get him. And it's like, yeah. I really want to understand. I want to understand why they think it's okay, because those same people would look at Trump and how he treated the media with such vitriol and how dangerous it was. And people would say that he put their lives at risk and he demonized them. So it's like, okay, but it's okay when your guy does it, and because we are smaller and we don't get money from the government, it's totally okay. It's like, it's so tribal. It's literally the same thing as running around with pitchforks and torches after the monster. Like, we're the monster. Like Tamara is a monster. She's so.
Oh, I think. Catherine, you froze up a little bit. So maybe the internet at the Airbnb is a little bit tougher to use than it is out here in the middle of God's country. But just to expand on Catherine's comments there, Tamara's question was really about whether or not the Prime Minister has learned a lesson about deciding, at least the government deciding, who is and isn't a journalist. Because really, at this point, he should have. He lost in court in front of a judge twice yesterday, 3 times in total, if we count what happened in 2019. So her question really was, did you learn something, and are you going to stop? And instead of saying, you know what, we respect the will of the court, and that's why you're here, and so you're free to ask your questions and your colleagues are free to ask your questions. That would have been the grown-up, statesman-like response. But Justin Trudeau is neither grown-up nor statesman-like. So instead of saying, okay, yes, we respect the court, we don't want to be in contempt of the court, that's why you're here today, and it's not the government's job to decide who is and isn't a journalist, he goes on to say, as the Prime Minister, that you're not a journalist, which is exactly what the court told him yesterday that he could not do. I mean, the self-awareness is a little bit, it's really non-existent, right? And again, with so much of what Justin Trudeau does, like I said, the phone call is truly coming from inside the House. Oh, I think we have Catherine back. Yes? There she is. Oh, and we can't hear you quite yet. I was getting vertigo there. Thank you for breaking away, Justin. You know what? While we wait for Catherine to get all squared away on Zoom, why don't we move into the back-to-back questions that our team put to Jagmeet Singh? Because Jagmeet Singh, just as bad as Justin Trudeau with regard to press freedom. And so we had our team member on the ground there, Alexa. She led the question, but Catherine was so sharp, and it was, call it kismet, call it the hand of God. But Catherine was on the phone with the next question, and the follow-up was just an absolute evisceration of Jagmeet Singh. So maybe, Justin, while we wait for Catherine to get everything all sorted out, we can go to that.
Alexandra pour Rebel News. Historiquement, le NPD s'est opposé aux grandes sociétés pharmaceutiques et aux sociétés milliardaires qui se sont enrichies grâce au blocage, comme Amazon et Walmart. Et le NPD était très attentif aux libertés civiles, y compris en étant pro-choix sous son propre cas. Pourquoi avez-vous embrassé les milliardaires de Big Pharma et abandonné votre philosophie de pro-choix?
Merci, mais je ne réponds pas aux questions de Rebel News. Merci.
Est-ce que vous pensez que c'est une option de ne pas répondre à un média juste parce que le fait que vous ne nous aimez pas?
Nous devons...
Merci beaucoup.
Prochaine question au téléphone, s'il vous plaît.
The question is from Rebel News.
Good evening. Before you tell me that you're not going to answer my question, I just want to say that I'm not here representing myself or my company. I'm here representing millions of Canadians who have real questions for you, like the one my colleague Alexa just asked. People who you would marginalize. Is your message to them that they are second-class citizens?
Not at all. Sorry.
Oh, hi. I guess we don't have Catherine back quite yet. But, you know, as I watch that, I think to myself, do these censorious jackwagons really realize the job that they're applying for? They are applying for a job that represents all Canadians, all political viewpoints. Do they want to be the prime minister of just NDP voters and just Liberal voters? Or do they want to be the prime minister of all Canada, uniting all of Canada instead of dividing all of us? But Jagmeet Singh, clearly, he only wants to talk to people he agrees with. And that's not what a leader does. A leader wants to unite the country, talk to everybody, and hear everybody out. But he only wants to talk to true believers. And I'm so proud of Catherine, cool as a cucumber, asking that follow-up question. Truly, I mean, that's the universe at work, that you were the next person on the line to ask that question. And he really didn't have an answer for it, because I think your question, just by you asking it, embarrassed him greatly.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. The internet is a little spotty out here. But yeah, I like I said earlier, and I guess we should have given the context before I jumped into it. But the timing was perfect, giving Alexa the question, him saying, and we expected that because that's how he treats us always, him saying, I'm not going to answer to Rebel News. And then, of course, I came just like one or two questions later. So we knew, let's not waste a question when we know he's going to just say, I'm not going to answer to Rebel News. Like, let's preemptively. And those were questions that we'd all discussed together. So I was prepared. And I'm just so glad that I got to, make him blush a little bit, because he was very uncomfortable, I think. And I've never made a political leader that uncomfortable before.
You know what? I don't know about that. I think our sheer presence makes political leaders uncomfortable, because they know from us they're going to get tough accountability questions instead of just, softball, slow pitches across the plate, like what they were getting from the mainstream media. I mean, I noticed even they had some journalists there, there was one journalist there who asked a question about the Congo and Chad. And I thought, these are the people that you kept us out of in favor of people who are not even, Canadian journalists. You were going to keep us out instead of letting us in. And I watched Jagmeet Singh sort of struggle through that question. It was like your canned NDP responses. We believe in peace, blah, 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 blah. We hope people can all live together in harmony. And then, it'll be rainbows every day and money will rain from the sky or whatever. And he did not expect Alexa to ask a question that said, weren't you the party of skeptics who generally don't like big conglomerates getting richer and richer off the backs of small people and misery and government contracts? weren't you the people against Big Pharma lining their pockets all the time? How do you reconcile that with your positions today of mandatory vaccines? He didn't have a good answer for that. There was no good answer for that because it would, I mean, you have to admit that you're a hypocrite. So instead, he just took the easy out. Well, I don't answer questions from Rebel News. Well, you know, I'm just so proud of the question that you asked because, you know, it's nerve wracking. It is nerve wracking to be on the phone and you hear that it's your turn to ask the question. You're like, oh, you want to freeze, but you have to realize the politician is scareder of you than you are of him. And that was pretty clear in your interaction with him, because I mean, like I said, just even asking the question was an embarrassment to him because it pointed out just how petty he is, but also Justin Trudeau was as well.
Yeah. I heard through Alexa when we were doing our little recap last night, she said her mom was watching the CBC broadcast, and afterwards they talked about how, you know, Trudeau really gave it to Rebel News, good for him, which, you know, is disappointing, but to be expected. But what was shocking was that they thought Jagmeet made an embarrassment. They said he was wrong to deny us our question. And so it's interesting that, I mean, I guess they love Trudeau, so they want to always support him. But it's interesting that we got a little bit of support from the CBC on that one, because I wasn't expecting anyone from the mainstream media to take our side on that issue. But even they were like, you know, these are journalists. They fought to get in there. Just to say, no, you can't ask your question, it's wrong. We're there. The Debates Commission let us in the door for a reason. So for him to think that he's above that standard that he abides by is you know, embarrassing for him.
Yeah, I think too. I mean, it goes to a problem with ethics and politics. And we've seen, I mean, Justin Trudeau, I mean, 1, 2, 3 ethics rulings. I mean, they're numbering them Trudeau 1, Trudeau 2, Trudeau 3. There's just been so many. And, you know, when you see that, you know, these politicians are so willing to disregard the rules because they don't think the rules apply to them. So Justin Trudeau, we heard it from him. He said, well, you're not media, even though a court literally told you today twice that we are media. And Jagmeet Singh refused to answer those questions. I think it just goes to show how ethically deficient these people are. And I will lump the Conservatives in with them as well, because the Conservatives were completely silent while we were up against 7 government lawyers to just get access to these debates. They didn't say like, hey, you might not like them. We might not even like them, but they do have a right to be there because they represent a viewpoint of Canadians. They don't even have to say it's a valid viewpoint. I don't care. I don't need validation from politicians. But just to say, look, they have a right to be there because this is a free, vigorous, vibrant democracy, and the free press is a part of that. And they couldn't even say that because they shot themselves in the foot all the way along the campaign trail when they were kicking Alexa out because she just wanted to ask a question. I'm very sad that Alexa did not see my friend Corey Hahn, the communications director for the Conservative Party of Canada, who has kicked her out all along the way because a court should have taught him a lesson yesterday too, that you don't get to decide who journalists are. Nobody does. It's up to us to decide who our journalists are. Let the market set that. And I'm sad she didn't get to see him because I think that's a lesson that all these politicians need to learn.
Yeah. And about the Conservatives, I sometimes forget that, like, I expect them to stand up for the things that I somewhat believe in because I used to be a Conservative. I voted for Andrew Scheer last election. But, you know, Erin O'Toole is just inches ahead of Justin Trudeau right now. And it seems like he will say anything or not say anything so that he can keep that lead. At this point, it's like, say whatever the mainstream, basically it's the swing voter, which I think is like a female between 30 and 40. That's like that key demographic that these guys need to win over. So as long as he doesn't piss off those people, he's good. So I'm not shocked that the Conservatives didn't say anything. It would be interesting to see if O'Toole was already in power, if that would be different. like because he is, he has so much to lose right now. So I don't expect any support from him. And obviously if Maxime Bernier was there, he would have said something about it, but that's a whole other thing where he was.
Yeah, again, it speaks to just how ethically deficient these people are. We've got, liberals and NDPers who just will defy the will of the court, the law of the land, to ignore the fact that we are indeed journalists. And then you have Aaron O'Toole, who's willing to say and do anything to win. Really, that's what it comes down to for him right now. I look at his most recent flip-flop on the gun ban. He flip-flopped on the carbon tax a long time ago, and now he's flip-flopped on the gun ban, something that he called arbitrary and undemocratic. He called it that just last year. What changed? What changed? He said it was just, a mishmash of just liberals not liking how things looked. What has changed about the mechanics of a 410 bird gun since that time? Nothing has. It's just that he is appealing to swing voters in, I guess, the GTA and jettisoning his base, or at least thinking my base will continue to vote for me because I'm not Justin Trudeau. And for a lot of conservative voters, that's not good enough, especially here in the West, because our votes really don't matter anyway, so we'll vote our conscience. And, it's a real pity to see conservative politicians just take for granted their own positions and their policy issues. We're supposed to literally be the party of science, that taxes don't change the weather, which I think is the scientific viewpoint on that. And that how you feel about the caliber of a firearm and the black plastic of a firearm does not change the mechanics of it. That's the scientific standpoint. But we've just conceded all of that to the liberals now. All of it. I know, Justin, you want the chats read.
Oh,
go ahead. Go ahead. Respond, please. No, respond, please.
I was just going to say, most people don't know the first thing about guns, myself included. So I'm learning now. I'm taking some gun safe. I guess I should get in not that way, this way. There we go. I'm taking a firearm safety course. And in that course, our instructor was explaining to us how many times Justin Trudeau has blatantly lied about, we're banning this gun because of and he's like, do you know how many guns of that specific gun that Justin Trudeau was talking about have killed Canadians? He's like, zero. It's like a waterfowl gun. Or I can't remember the exact gun he was talking about, but it's Justin Trudeau is banking on the fact that nobody knows, there's a fringe group that understands firearms safely. And then of course there's the criminal element who are probably not watching the debates or following along with the political, the election. So he's banking on the fact that most people don't know the first thing about guns. So he can just scare, guns are bad. And Aaron O'Toole, with everything to lose, is just sure. Yeah, guns are bad. Let's ban whatever. Let's flip-flop on whatever. Let's flip-flop on vaccine passports. It's whatever he can say to get in right now. And that's politics, but it's despicable.
Yeah. Well, and it doesn't even matter. I wouldn't even say that it's a fringe segment of the Canadian population that understands guns. We're just not in the GTA. That's the difference. I think I've seen some statistics where more people engage in hunting and sports shooting and own firearms than play organized hockey in this country. If you really want to think about it, sports shooting and firearms ownership might be the national sport. If you think about it that way,
I did not know that.
Yes. And it's just not in the pocket where those swing voters exist. And so instead of going and trying to educate those people, I always say, take a liberal to the gun range if you want to make a gun advocate, because they get there, it's super fun. And they're like, oh, this is wicked. Let's not ever ban this. But instead of trying to educate those people, we are just playing on their ignorance. And I think that's really exploiting of people. And, when you have the liberals who won't address, and to use the language of the liberals, the root cause of gun violence, it has a lot to do with the porous border, where guns are being trafficked from the United States. They're not coming from me. I'm not buying a gun down at the old Cabela's and then looking around for the closest gangster and selling him my 22. That's not how it works. These guns are being trafficked across the border from the United States illegally. So they're coming into the country illegally because the border is wide open. People are walking across, guns are walking across, contraband's walking across. But instead of dealing with that, it's easy to go after the most law-abiding people in the country. Firearms owners were vetted every single day, because we will go along. We are by nature law-abiding. So when they change the laws, we begrudgingly follow them when they could easily just fix the border problem, but that's not popular amongst open border liberals.
Yeah.
Anyway, Justin, I know you want us to get to these chats, so let's just deal with this. Okay, we've got a Rumble rant from Paul Otto Newman. Paul, you are a very dedicated viewer and supporter of us. Thank you so much. You give us $5 and you say you'd like to hear O'Toole give an answer about his position on equalization, particularly on what he'll do when Alberta's equalization referendum compels him to negotiate and end the payments. You know what? That is such a great question, because we heard a lot yesterday about how we have to butt kiss Quebec. And I think that's just the nature of a French language debate. And I had to listen to separatist French politicians say that they're going to give Alberta money to phase out oil and gas. And I'm like, were you going to give us our own money? That's weird. Okay, whatever. but I think it would be interesting to hear, like, you guys are about to be mugged by reality on the equalization issue. If Alberta holds a referendum and it goes the way we naturally think it will go here in Alberta, what are you going to do then, Quebec? And what are you going to do then? So I think that's a great question. Yeah, that's really great. We've got a Rumble rant from, this is a Fight the Fine recidivist from the Ontario area, Fraser McBurney. He gives us $5 and he says, after watching the debate, who in their right mind would vote for those bozos? It was a very boring debate. We made it exciting, though. It was really boring. Did you find that?
100%. I was saying last night that they should pay us. They should be paying us to get people to watch, because we were definitely the most entertaining part of that debate. So you are welcome, Debates Commission. You are welcome, CBC.
It was really boring. It was a bunch of people. Like, it was like, like when you hold up paint chips and everything is supposed to be off-white, eggshell, and you're like, but those are all the same color, but they have different names. That's how I felt. Like, I felt like I was at the paint store looking at something I don't have the optic acuity to understand. Like, that's how it felt. I'm like, so that's eggshell, like, that's off-white, that's yeah, and I'm like, that's ivory. And I'm like, they're all saying the same thing. They're all saying that climate change is going to kill us. They're all saying that they need to phase out oil and gas, put a hard cap on emissions, and somehow duck hunters are responsible for gun crime, and feminism this and blah, 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 and childcare, instead of saying like, hey, why don't we make it easier for moms to stay home and raise their own kids, because that's the best place for kids to be, is in the care and control of their own parents. Why aren't we considering policies like that? No, we have to fund daycare to make sure kids are out of the home all day. Like, it was just, everybody was exactly the same. And it was like, even on vaccines, everything was exactly the same. And I thought, well, this is exactly why they didn't want the Maverick Party there. This is exactly why they didn't want Bernier there, because otherwise, like, the whole thing was just a bunch of homogeneity. I was like, what? How is anybody any different? Nobody was exciting. Nobody even said anything fun. It was just boring.
Yeah, and I expected that when Bernier was declined from joining, even though he has more support right now than the Green Party and the Bloc Québécois. Funny how that works. It's just like on that one day that they made that call, he was below that threshold for being invited. So they're like, oh, today's the day we make the decision. You're below the 4% national support, so you can't come. But it's like recent polling puts him around 10%. So it's like he's well within the margin. He has millions of followers. And he would, like you said, he's the only person who would have put these questions, like he would have said something different than everyone else's eggshell white, ivory, whatever. He's lime green, and he's going to say, what about the Constitution? What about our freedoms? What about What about the vaccine passport? What about media silencing and censorship and BC10? Like, what about these important things? No one wants to talk about them. And the only guy that would have actually said anything about those things is uninvited. So we knew it would be boring. Just how boring it was, I was not expecting.
It was so boring. Like I remarked to Ezra last night, I find Elizabeth May absolutely unpalatable and insufferable. And I was missing her last night. I'm like, somehow the Green Party positions on everything, which I fundamentally oppose, generally speaking, I couldn't even muster up the excitement to be annoyed by them because Anna May Paul was so boring. But everybody was so boring. It was just awful. And, you know, like this whole thing about how we have to do this in Ottawa, we have to do this in Quebec. Why don't we have a debate in Calgary? You know, like there's a rising tide of Western separatism. Why aren't we talking about those issues? If they say that Maxime Bernier, his support is really out here in the West. Okay, well, let's have a Western debate that includes him. I mean, we had the Bloc there. We had Anna May Paul, who literally has not campaigned out of her neighborhood. How is she a national leader of anything? Why aren't we including the West in any of this? As a Westerner, I just watched everybody talk about us, but not to us. Nobody even considered us in last night's debate. They just talked about all the things they're going to do to us to put us out of work, but nobody even is consulting us on any of these issues. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways, I can go on forever.
She has so much. She's fighting her own party. I tried to catch her the other week. She was campaigning in her neighborhood. I didn't realize that she does that every day. She never leaves her neighborhood. So I was like, oh, she's in Toronto. Like, let's go. Let's find her. But it's like, no, that's just where she is every day. She never leaves. I wonder if that's, Justin Trudeau talks about climate change and reducing emissions and all these unattainable goals. And yet the man is flying on a jet plane all over the place, calling elections that don't need to be called. I wanted to know if Anna May Paul's never leaving her neighborhood is like a moral choice because she doesn't want to create more emissions. I'm thinking it's not. I'm thinking she doesn't have the funding or the support to travel to other places. But that would be an interesting question. I wanted to ask her if I had the chance last night, if it's like a moral choice, do you oppose the fact that Justin Trudeau called this unnecessary election during a deadly pandemic and is using jet planes and buses with his face all over them to travel all over the country to wave and get booed at? Is that a moral choice, or is it because you don't have the support in the rest of the country? And if so, why are you here and Maxime is not, who has support nationally?
Yeah, I think some of that, and I've read some reports that because of the civil war taking place inside the Green Party, and they've tried to oust her, even though she was democratically elected, because she refuses to take the hardline stance, the anti-Israel hardline stance the rest of the party wants her to take, the flotilla version of the party, that they have cut her campaign funding. So basically, they've sort of kept her in the riding because they won't give her money to campaign other places. And really, it's a poison pill for her because she can't even go to the places where the Green Party might do well, like Vancouver Island or downtown Vancouver, wherever. The places that feel like another country when I visit them. They've basically made it so that she can't win in the places where she might be able to win, which will make her a bad leader, which will trigger a leadership review and get her out the door. And then the anti-Semites can continue to take over the party.
Yeah, and I don't know a lot about her issue. Is it just the Israel issue that her party has a problem with, or is it like something else? Because it's like she's the only female on that stage. She's the only Black leader, and she's the only Jewish leader, and she's getting more hate from her own party than any other leader. It's like, what's going on there? What kind of ism is that?
Well, it's because if you've ever been to Israel, and I know we had some plans to take the company there, and the pandemic hit, but I've been there a couple of times, and it is one of the most diverse countries you will ever visit. You've got, people living in Israel who've come back from the diaspora, who are from everywhere. But for progressives, you scratch a progressive and you'll find an anti-Semite. It's right under there. And so for the Green Party, all those things, all those boxes that she checks, the fact that she's not, I don't even know if she's pro-Israel, but she's just not anti-Israel, that makes all those other boxes that she checks completely irrelevant, because for them, that's the most important thing. And I've got theories about that, about how, they see it stems from anti-Americanism, and how that's like they see Israel as like the little America. So we hate America, so let's hate Israel. There's a lot of that happening too. But I think for her, all those other things that she is, they don't matter, because for them, their biggest issue is hate Israel.
Well, it's funny because they're the Green Party. You think it would be the climate that would be their biggest issue, but no, it's Israel. That's funny.
Yeah, it's weird. It's these people, This is why I'm not on the left. We've got a Rumble rant from BB Khan, gives us $3. Accuse others that what you're guilty of. It's a great deflection move, perfected by Justin Trudeau. Yeah, or like when he's, gets discovered doing gross things to women and abusing his position of power with women in a whole host of different ways, then it's a learning opportunity for the rest of us to deal with our sexism. And it's like, no, that's a you problem. That's not a Sheila problem. Likewise with blackface. Oh, it's a learning opportunity for all of us to deal with our, our latent racism. And it's like, no, my boss has never done blackface 3 times, but the Liberals' bosses sure have. So don't accuse me of racism, you weirdos. Yeah. We've got a hyper chat from Binga. Great job last night, Rebels. Shout out to Justin. Wonderful. Justin is truly the unsung hero of the network. He's behind the camera, putting up with all of us. He deals with all the technical issues. And a lot of the things we do around here, we're just like, well, let's hit broadcast and then figure it out as we go. And that's usually Justin's expertise. We've got a hyper. Okay, so we are going to have to, thank you for flagging that to me, Justin. We're probably going to have to say bye to our YouTube friends right now, but hopefully our YouTube friends will join us for the next 8 minutes. Holy, we made it quite a ways, didn't we, on YouTube today? So hopefully our friends who are watching us exclusively on YouTube right now can move over to Rumble, Super U, and Odyssey so that we can finish up some of these hyper chats and Rumble rants without getting us completely terminated off YouTube. So Justin, if you wouldn't mind letting me know when we are kicked off.